Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
It's me, Daniel,
And it's been
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Well, this is only interesting to us. We recorded
it's
Watchmen
perfect.
before we recorded this.
And we forgot about
yeah.
this movie to
It's
put into our...
300. We did it.
But
300.
you as the audience will think, oh, these guys are just being really honest about a very human mistake.
Yeah, will not make any difference to you listening in
yeah.
order.
And we're going to keep it in because that's speaks to our integrity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, we forgot about 300, and we remembered it during the Watchmen episode. So when you get to the Watchmen episode, you'll understand what we mean.
Yeah.
But 300, the film by because what originally happened, and to give you context because you won't hear this yet, when we did the Watchmen, that we realized that was the first Zack Snyder film that we did in this rewatch-a-thon, and we were like, wait, that's wrong because he's so fundamentally important to comic book films, whether you like him or not. The reality is we wanted to review obviously the more positively liked movies and see if they still held up, and 300 is universally one of those films that is very, very positively liked. So we're coming back to 300 between Daniel and I, but everyone else, this is new for you.
Yeah, 300. I think, well, right away, I liked it the same amount I did the first time, which is to say not very much.
Oh, really? So for me, this was, I liked it. It didn't get worse or better with time. It was the exact same movie. The only thing I was like, oh, okay. I forgot that Michael Fassbender was in this. That was it.
And I thought he was going to turn bad, but he just didn't. I was like, what? I was like, no. How do you get Michael Fassbender and don't have him have a heel turn or something?
Right? Yeah. Like I
was happy that he didn't turn bad, I guess, is what I have to say. I was like, yeah, that's nice. He got to be the good guy till the end.
It felt weird. It felt like a Sean Bean movie where he gets to live.
Well, if Sean Bean was in this movie, he definitely would have died with them.
Oh, he definitely would have died.
Yeah. All of the heroes die at the end. That's how it would happen in real life, I guess. I guess let me start with some positive stuff. It's gonna sound like I'm joking, but one thing that I found kind of unlocked it for all the other Zack Snyder movies is, you know how like people knock Michael Bay for like focusing too much on like a woman's ass or something like that during a shot? I find that he doesn't really linger on female bodies like that. Or if he does, it's equal because there's so much like display for the male body in this movie and most of his movies. Like I feel like if you think about Dr. Manhattan in that, like I know that that's the comic book, he's naked, but there does seem to be like a care taken to show off Dr. Manhattan as naked. Just like, I mean, there's a shot in this movie for no reason whatsoever where Gerard Butler is just naked looking out his window. And I mean, it is an interesting thing that Zack Snyder does where I feel like he's like, I mean, maybe you can just leave it at he's very interested in a human body, but he doesn't seem to have like a like kind of creepy thing with women. It does seem to be like it's the male body on display, even when you think of like Ben Affleck in Batman vs Superman, or like Henry Cavill in general in Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. Like he really likes to show off the male body.
Yeah, I think he just likes the aesthetic of physique in general. You know, I feel like this movie definitely goes a long way to prove that, for sure.
Like they're basically naked all movie. Like they're covering up their groin area, but like there's not a lot of like dressed people, and the people who are dressed up are the bad guys, like Dominic West and like the bureaucrats back home.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
those are
like
like the bad guys, the people that are, or even the Persians that are fully dressed. It's like kind of like the good guys are the ones that are just completely showing who they are and bare.
yeah, and Xerxes as well.
Oh yeah, I forgot he's
Him
pretty naked.
being very, 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 his physique also being what it is, and the Xerxes physique being what it is. That to me is like, okay, there was really no need to make Xerxes as jacked as he was. There really was no need, because like you've got this empire, people think you're a god, you've done all this kind of stuff already. You don't need the physique, you've already got the power, kind of deal. But that was Snyder's way of being like, oh no, I just really appreciate the human physique, and like, oh, we need different body types in this because that's realistic. But like the people that he wants to shine the spotlight on, to me, is like he's really gonna to show off that the physique aspect of it. I 100% agree, because like when we watched Watchmen, when I watched 300, there is definitely, I feel, not a creepiness to this. And when I was watching this with Stacy, 300, we were talking about the physiques a lot. Obviously because it's a very visually pleasing movie for her. And then because of the men and all that kind of stuff. So we were talking about it quite a bit. And the one thing that she did notice was like, I really appreciate the fact that there was not this over like focus on women the way Michael Bay
Like they
does.
weren't overly sexualized. Like
Yes.
they had the Oracle, but that
Yeah.
seemed more artistic than it was like, yeah, you can
100%.
kind of see her boobs through the silk. Like it was like, yeah, like this is an artistic expression of something.
Yeah, it's just like that scene itself. Like the only thing creepy about that scene is that I don't forget what those guys are called, but the fact that they lick her, and that's
I forgot about that.
creepiest thing. That's the creepiest thing about that scene. Other
But
than
that's
that,
on
it's
them,
like,
not the movie. Like I feel like that's trying to show how like disgusting they are.
yes, 100%, 100%. They're like like it showed off that to me. And she was like, oh yeah, that's gross and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it is. But then she was like, but it's not overly sexualized. Like that dance, like she was like, this is very beautiful. Like it's artistic. The visuals of it were fantastic. And we would just watch that again as an interpretive dance in many ways.
Yeah.
So
I appreciated
100%
the lack of leering on the female body for what is a pretty, like, I would say, toxic masculinity driven movie.
100%. This movie is very, very much driven by toxic masculinity. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
but
like
yeah, the not focusing on the sexuality, and just Snyder being like, I like the physique. I like human physique. This is why I made Superman's suit this way. This is why, all this kind of stuff. Like it makes, I can really appreciate his, I guess, gender neutral appreciation of physique, as well as
I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah. And also
it does seem to skew more towards male, but not in like a I secretly there's no need for him to secretly like men. I'm just saying like I don't come away from it being like, hey, like why does he care so much? It does seem like he just objectively likes the look of the male body, and that does kind of filter into liking the human body overall, as he shows off the Oracle's body a certain way.
It's quite interesting to me because, like old Renaissance artists like Da Vinci and all that kind of stuff would do autopsies and study the human body for their art. And to me, I'm like, is this a modern day kind of his interpretation of like, I'm going to try to put a Da Vinci stroke of whatever by really focusing on the physique side of things in my movies. Like, I don't know if that's part of it.
Could be.
I mean, it could be, but maybe we're just giving Snyder a lot more praise in that than we want it to be.
Well, I think it's intentional. It's not like an accident that we both came away and Stacy came away with that.
Yeah, I think it is intentional, but my thought of that is, was it intentional because he was being like, no, I have to be faithful to the comic book, and this is how the comic is drawn?
I mean, I think we already know. Yes, he's very faithful to the way things are drawn, but it
Yeah.
it tracks in everything he does
Yeah.
to the point that people didn't like what the changes he made to Superman's outfit, but like
Mhm.
he did it anyway because that was pleasing to his eye.
Yeah, but also the changes to the Superman outfit, like I assume we're talking about the underwear on top of the thing, right?
That yeah, I think that was the
Yeah.
main thing, but I know people kind of in general are like, oh, why does it look that way? But yes, that was the main
Yeah.
thing that he changed that people had a problem with.
Yeah, and I'm like, and to me personally, I'm like, cool, fine. The underwear on top of everything thing was resembling, it was kind of resembling that era of bodybuilding, the aesthetic at the time, or something like that. Tough men
Yeah,
or
yeah.
muscle men was like that would what they would wear, so aesthetically. But like you look at tough men now or bodybuilders now, they don't wear that. So it's just like, no, that was the underwear on top thing was definitely a thing of the time.
So yeah, this is a Frank Miller graphic novel.
Hmm.
I think I don't like Frank Miller is kind of where I'm at. I'm like, yeah, I like Dark Knight Returns. I
Yeah.
think that's a good graphic novel. But like, yeah, he leans so right wing that it's
Yes, he does.
very like I remember watching or not watching, reading All Star Batman or something, and I was just like,
Hmm.
I can't stand this. That's the one where he's like, I'm the goddamn Batman, and he like smacks Robin. I'm like, I just don't like this. There's
Yeah.
some. It's got a weird thing about masculinity, and it doesn't really work for me
Hmm.
overall.
Hmm.
I know he did Sin City as well,
But that's
but
also filled with toxic
yeah, yeah.
masculinity,
No,
like
that's what I'm saying.
tons of it.
That's
Yeah.
I feel like I don't like it. Sin City I think this episode comes out after the Sin City episode, so they'll already have heard my opinion. That was like I saw that movie at a time where I'm like, this looks cool, I like it.
Hmm.
Whereas I didn't, and I didn't see 300 in theaters, and I think that definitely took away from the enjoyment.
Hmm.
But yeah, I tried to focus this time around, and I was just like, I think what it is like my mother and I used to really like talking and like reading about Greek history
Yeah.
and like the Spartans in particular. And when we went to Greece, we like took tours that would show us like Sparta and stuff like that, and learning about the Battle of Thermopylae and so. And I'm just like, yeah, there was so much. It's, I mean, it's shorter than 2 hours, but it is like it feels so long because it's so focused on them fighting Xerxes, and I'm like, but there's
Hmm.
so many other interesting things going on. And I know that they do the one scene where she stabs Dominic West and gets her revenge for him raping her, but I'm like, the movie could have done her a better service by showing like all the work she put into getting the other nations of Greece. I know because it wasn't all one thing at that point, but like getting people from Athens, getting the rest of Sparta to like help out the 300 men that are out there.
Hmm.
And like, because there's so much intrigue that could have been happening while you also offset that with the like fight.
Hmm.
Or just make it a shorter movie and it's just about the fight. But it
Yeah.
just felt like this uneven thing where you like spend the first 40 minutes with those guys
Hmm.
and then you kind of like, yeah, like they did their fighting, and then you come back and I didn't remember how it resolved, but I was like, oh yeah, like I guess the one speaking role for the woman has to be raped, like that sucks. And then I'm like, I guess if you take that out, you lose the poetry of her stabbing him and being like, oh, this isn't gonna be
Hmm.
short and you're not gonna enjoy it. But I'm like, I would be fine to lose that if you gave her like, if you showed her like showing the strength of the men who just fight, but also the strength of Leonidas's wife, who
Hmm.
like got things done and broke through all the bureaucracy to get them the help.
Yeah, her character was definitely very, very strong in her own right. And she's basically like I liked when the messenger came and the messenger was like, "Who is this woman to
Mm-hmm.
talk to me like this?" And then the way she replies and the way like the relationship between Gerard Butler, like the Leonidas and the Queen, is actually such a fantastic one. But if there was obviously more communication, that we're chalking that up to the toxic masculinity thing. But the fact that he looks to her for reassurance for the decision he's about
Before
to make.
he
Kicks the messenger. The fact that she speaks to the messenger, and then she's like, and then the king's like, yeah, she's gonna talk to you however the fuck she wants. Like she's my queen, you're my visitor, and then also like he's like, keep in mind in Sparta, we kind of like, just because you're a messenger doesn't make you immune to the I guess the weight of the message or whatever it is you're delivering.
Don't kill the messenger isn't a thing in Sparta.
Exactly. It's just like, no, we're going to kill you if we want to, if we feel like you're not giving us the respect, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and, I guess the movie was just saying like, yeah, violence is the way, because that's the only way she gets any kind of justice is by violently killing someone instead of using her words. So I guess I'm asking the movie to be something it never wanted to be. But I think that's a function of that's how the comic or the graphic novel worked, which is kind of why I don't like Frank Miller.
Right.
And I do think he's a good match for Zack Snyder in terms of adapter, because it feels like there isn't much nuance needed to adapt that type of stuff. You can
absolutely.
You can have a Zack Snyder who's just like, yeah, that looked good in the panel, I'll just do that again.
The thing I think about Frank Miller is honestly, aside from the Dark Knight Returns stuff that he did, which was revolutionary, that like helped change the whole Batman landscape to what we have now, which is fantastic. So we really love Frank Miller for that. But you're right, every other depiction that he's had, he skews so right wing in his writing and his character design and all that kind of stuff. It makes it hard for me to appreciate. But
like he has that line, Leonidas has that line where he's like, oh yeah, the guys in Athens that read books and love boys, and I'm like, all right. Like I guess it's good that they added the love boys part, but it did seem like, yeah, the intellectuals who are gay, like you got to dismiss them. Whereas what the tension there was really like that they were thinking too much about it instead of acting, and I felt like the movie could have leaned into that better than just that throwaway line.
Yeah, that throwaway line of boy lovers, I think, is just so incredibly nuanced and could have been handled so much better. Just because, yes, like in Greek culture and everything like that, there was relationships between men, and it wasn't seen as homosexual, but like between especially like academics and scholars and their squires, like their I guess they're under teachers and everything like that. It was seen as, from a cultural standpoint, from what I understand, being not Greek and not having that much Greek history behind me, but it was seen as like a bond between the mentor and everything like that, and imparting wisdom or whatever it was. Like that was what it was explained to me. So like the nuance in that line makes it definitely seem more homophobic than what I guess he's trying to do, is the idea of like, no, these guys are just more concerned with talking things through and their relationships within themselves kind of deal, as opposed to what's better for the greater good kind of deal.
Yeah, and that or if he just wanted to call them pedophiles, it's weird to pair that with they read books and like it's just, it doesn't really work. The two aren't together, because if I'm being generous to them, then it is just showing that Leonidas thinks they're gay and they read too many books.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, I don't know. I think that's it. And again, I understand that's me wanting the movie to be something it never was trying to do.
Correct.
So again, all I can say is it doesn't work for me fully, because it feels like I'm not getting the full thing. Like, whereas we won't talk. This is the last time I'll bring up Watchmen anyway. When we talked about Watchmen, we knew that the text actually had more to it than what Zack Snyder was doing. Whereas this one, it's like, this very well could just be the text. Like Zack Snyder could have just been like, yeah, okay, we'll just do that. We'll do that. And that's that. And there was nothing more to it. It's just, it doesn't feel as satisfying to me. And it feels a bit uneven as a movie.
Yeah. So the thing is, Queen Gorgo, Lena Headey, apparently has more to do in this than the graphic novel actually did.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, so that to me is like okay, that's good. That's a win, you know. But it's still the concept and the materials behind it is just like, oh, we're really just pushing a toxic masculinity narrative. That's it.
Hmm. I mean,
Um,
that's good to know that she has more to do.
yeah.
Um, I wonder. I mean, yeah, I didn't read 300 ever.
Yeah, neither did I, and I think that's important for the audience to know is that we didn't actually read the source material here. We're just being like, as a movie, this is what we're critiquing. We're just looking at the movie.
Yeah.
And what we know from the comic book panel, like some of the screenshots and images of what those comic book panels look like. And then, so for example, the famous "This is Sparta" scene, if you look at the screenshot side by side with the comic book panel, it's like the exact same imagery, and that's beautiful. There's so many instances of that in the movie. And
Did you feel when you were watching it, did you feel that that moment was earned so early in the movie?
No.
It feels
I feel like
they did it just for the commercial, which was a big part of the commercials, like the trailers.
it was a huge part of the commercial. It
I
was
just feel like
one of the best things about the marketing of this was
Yeah.
that this is Sparta kind of deal. Like there was so much about that was awesome.
but like I feel like in the movie I'm just like, oh, I guess we're playing the hits. Like it didn't feel like a build up to that, or like
I guess
I think
the
it's the way
build-up-
Gerard Butler was playing it though, because he could have kept playing up the tension a bit more of like the building tension, because what he is saying on paper, I can see how another actor might have played a buildup of tension, because he does keep saying, well, you're here, you're insulting our way of life, you're insulting my wife, like my queen. But like it just seems like it just gets to that, and then he goes, "This just Sparta," and I'm like, that feels like 0 to 100. It doesn't feel like you were building up to yelling that.
No, to me, the tension there, I looked for more in Lena than I did in Gerard Butler. To me, the tension was in her. The moment she was like stood up for herself, did all that kind of stuff, you can feel in her energy, or at least I felt in her energy, that there's like there's tension building up and it's within her. And that's what I really, really appreciated with that, because like it was this idea of like they're such a good couple and king and queen that they actually know what each other's thinking and all that kind of stuff, that he just be like, no, we're on the same page about this, we need to do this kind of. So that was to me, when I watch that scene, I always look at the tension being developed between the husband and the wife, because to me the messenger doesn't feel like he's doing anything wrong. He's like, no, like I'm this messenger of God, you're not going to hurt me, this is crazy, like nothing like that, I represent a God that's going to take over your nation, so why do I have to do all this kind of stuff? So the tension,
I guess what I'm saying, his yelling doesn't really jive with what you're saying.
really
That big yelling moment, like if you're saying it's just between the husband and the wife, then what is he yelling at that guy for before he kicks him into the thing? It should have just been like, okay, I got the okay, and then he kicks him into the pit. And then like maybe you turn around cool and be like, this is Sparta, like this isn't Persia, this is Sparta or something. But like that yelling is like that is a release for Leonidas. So if you're saying all the tension is building up in the queen, why does that, what makes that transfer to Leonidas?
I feel it's probably a display of I feel like this is a toxic masculinity thing where it's like, okay, I have to look like I'm in charge, but really it was my queen that made the decision or something like that, or like we had to agree or consent together in order to do that, but like I want to make it look like it's purely my thing. I know, like, and the reason why I say this is because I see a lot of this behavior in Asian cultures and Asian relationships, where it typically in Asian cultures, it's a matriarchal society, so the women typically make the majority of the decisions and the men are there to support. But in public, it's very much like a Leonidas Queen Gorgo thing, where it's like the man will look like he's in charge for the sake of the man, because let's remember too, like there's a lot of toxic masculinity within Asian culture, like a shit ton. If you ever question it, watch any anime and tell me there's no toxic masculinity in there. It's absolutely crazy. So the idea to me is like, no. So that's why I appreciated that scene, or it made more sense to me because I see it every single day. It's just like
I understand what you're saying in terms of
So I
What?
feel like that's where the yell or like the scream, "This is Sparta" comes from. Is like, no, yeah, I'm allowing you to do this. So be a man, and then I'm gonna yell loudly and kill someone, and then that's like, yeah, I'm a man now, cool, kind of deal.
All right.
That's how I see it.
Yeah. I think it doesn't really work for me.
Gotcha.
I feel like it just comes out of nowhere. But
Mm.
with that background, I can see why it makes sense to you. I just feel like then the movie is about something else. If what you're saying is this is a release for him because he has to act like he's in charge, whereas the movie never makes me feel like he isn't in charge.
Yeah,
It
no,
does the
yeah.
point of like showing him with the wolf at the beginning.
Mhm.
He is the chosen one. He's the one that did that. He uses the same game plan he did for the wolf with the Persians.
Mhm.
So I feel like what the movie is trying to show is that he doesn't look down on his wife. Like
Yes.
she is a part of decision making.
Mhm.
But I don't think it's a front because there is no one that doesn't believe he's in charge.
Right. Maybe I should correct myself. I shouldn't say that it's a front. What I should say, it's an overt display at that point to
Yeah. No,
squash any kind of thing.
I do think you explained it very well, and like it's just I don't have that background, so to me, like the movie didn't feel like that's what it was doing. But
Gotcha.
that's not me saying you're wrong. I'm saying I feel like you explained that very well, and that makes sense.
Right. And I guess that's why a lot of Asians love this movie too, because they're like, hey, that's like my relationship. But yeah, and for sure. No, I definitely felt like that was, whether or not it was earned properly, it could be debated, but it was still obviously one of the most memorable things from this movie
Yeah.
because of all the internet memes and the jokes and everything that came out of that. But and of course how heavily they relied on it in
The marketing.
marketing. Yeah, for sure. But
It just felt like it was such an isolated moment. It didn't
Oh, yeah.
feel like it was a theme or like it didn't feel like it was a payoff to anything. I just was kind of like, oh, I mean, as you said, it looks exactly like it does in the comic book. So I guess there's that.
Yep.
And for me, I'm all about like world building. So like to have that feel like more of like a payoff to something that was set up earlier, I guess is what would work for me. But I feel like what you're saying is it is speaking to a dynamic that a certain culture already has.
I believe so, yes.
Well, that's good then. I think, yeah, I was like much like Man of Steel. I kind of was like not as not. I shouldn't say impressed. I was kind of like worn out by all the fight scenes.
Right.
I was kind of like, yeah.
Really? So the thing I love most about this movie is the fight scenes.
Yeah, but I feel like by the time I get to the end, I'm like, no, all right.
Sure.
I'm not like excited anymore. I'm kind of like, all right, let's get through this one.
I think the thing I really, really appreciate about the fight scenes is that, because I always grew up watching action movies, kung fu movies, and all that kind of stuff. The thing that annoys me most, and I've recently been watching this guy on YouTube, like professional martial artist, like breaks down or comments on fight scenes, movie fight scenes, and watching this guy talk about stuff that he's done in movies he's been in and all that kind of stuff, especially with group fights. It raised a very, very interesting idea to me, is the idea that he was saying that fight choreography in a group fight situation really doesn't work well because everyone knows that the camera is focused on two people, and then everyone else is just waiting for a moment to jump in, and that's a little bit more coordinated. But the idea of the visual, if you rewatch the majority of fight scenes now, if you go back to them and you're like, yeah, it's like there's a whole bunch of people, they're like waiting to jump in, and like they're like ready to go, and they're waiting to jump in for their moment, right? So there's like an element of that where it's just really, really unrealistic, because if you have that many people, you would just think like, okay, let's swarm this one guy, suppress him or something like that, as a very, very basic kind of thing, like a numbers thing. We just push them and all that kind of stuff. So in these fight scenes, I really, really appreciate it because you have multiple people doing multiple things. Like each fight has been choreographed so well that you're not just watching two people fight and then other people waiting to jump in. You're watching so much stuff happen. Like, to me, the scene where Fassbender and the son are doing their like the fun thing, like where Gimli and what's his face, the archer dude in Lord of the Rings, has like, oh yeah, we're having a competition. No, that still counts as one. Like that fun scene that they're having during the fight, and they're like, no, someone's got to watch your back. I'm doing this. Like, that is such a beautiful fight scene, because they're both doing so many different things, and how they link up together and all that kind of stuff. It's actually crazy. It makes me think of like, and this is the reality of it. You get to see this really come to fruition, because I think that guy raised the point, is like, if you want to watch a good group fight scene, play a video game and see how the dynamics there work out, because it's not the same thing altogether. There's definitely video games like the Batman Arkham series where there's multiple guys, usually in in a movie, you'll see like one guy is ready to throw a punch. In like the Batman Arkham game, it's like, no, you got 3 or 4 or 5 guys going on at the same time ready to throw a punch at Batman, and you got to avoid that, right? So he was like, no, video games have a much more realistic fight scene because the AI treats every single character independently. So that's really, really cool, the point he raised up. So in this movie, the fact that the fight scenes, I was looking forward to them drastically because of what that guy said in his YouTube video. And then rewatching it now, it's so much more artistic. It was wonderful. I loved it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm glad that worked for you. It doesn't really make it. I mean, the other thing is he's talking about like a superhero fighting people. You're talking about 2 armies going at it. So yeah, that would.
There's differences obviously there, but like even then, he's like, oh, when I did this fight scene on this thing, and it's just like, oh yeah, when you have an all-out brawl, it's very like it's very, very interesting. His depiction of Hollywood fight scenes, it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I like those videos as well. Like when they bring it up, like I watched a video where this woman was recreating the like moves from Mortal Kombat in real life.
Right.
Like it was like, that is really cool. And like, or watching video games and be like, oh, good technique, but that wouldn't be the best way to do this. But yeah, so that kind of stuff is fun. I just think that the movie doesn't really give itself room to build up to anything.
No.
So really yeah, you can, I guess, yeah, it's, if you're appreciating the way they choreograph the fight scenes, that's good. Mm-hmm. But to me, I guess it's the issue that I always have with Zack Snyder, even as the stuff you're talking about, what you like, it's like, yeah, it's these moments that he threw in there that aren't really cohesive enough to form a whole. It's just like, okay, here's the scene that will speak to a certain culture because of the dynamic between the husband and the wife, because then they're never together again, so you don't really, there's nothing to do with that relationship after that. Or I guess, yeah, you could go every fight scene like, oh, that's really cool, they did this, but it was kind of like, where are we going with this? I mean, if you know history, you know where we're going with it, but it does kind of make it seem like all a futile thing then, if you are aware that like, well, those 300 people are just going to die, but we're not building up to any kind of form of despair, or they tried but it didn't work out. It's just like, no, they're men and they fight and they kill people. And I was like, yep, that's true.
That's all this
that is a fact.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't need an hour and 58 minutes of it if I'm like, yep, you did, you said it at the beginning of the movie and it was true at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I agree that the movie could have been shorter. I agree with that. Like, even though, like, yes, I loved visuals of the fight scenes and all that, I really appreciated that. I do agree that there were elements of this movie that did feel too long, for sure. It was, and I don't know if that was because it's like, oh, Snyder's really making a lot of use of those slow down sequences to be like, look how visually cool this one punch was. And like how this guy flipped over and all that kind of stuff with one punch or something like that. Like, especially in that fight scene with the son and Michael Fassbender, that scene in particular is so well done from the slow-mo kind of things. And it was, to me, it was like, because the film was so interested in like, here is what Xerxes has as an army. Here are the chemists throwing their bombs with their shrapnel and all that kind of stuff. Here are the
Immortals.
elephants. Here are the immortals. Here are these soldiers, and here are the ships. Like they were really, really, really concerned with like, no, Xerxes really threw everything he had at them, and they really just resisted until the very, very end. And it was with really good strategy and all that kind of stuff, with fighting and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. It's just doesn't work for me. I felt like it just, especially since it's in one place, there doesn't feel like there's any progression or anything. It's like it's all at that wall and in that passage that was his plan, but it was kind of like, oh, the first time it happens, I'm like, it seems like this is where the movie should end. But like they basically get to it so quickly that like I'm gonna watch all these waves all movie. Like it doesn't feel like, and then they take a break and you see what the queen is doing.
Right.
And like, do you see her? Oh no, you do see her at the end because the messenger lets her know like, oh, he's dead.
Yeah. I will say the apparently in the comic book, Queen Gorgo only appears in the beginning. So the stuff that is with the politician, that scene and all that kind of stuff, her trying to get like the politicians to send the army to support Leonidas and all that kind of stuff, that's all like original movie stuff. So that's really cool because
I mean, I think that stuff is a nice try. So yeah, I'll give them that. I just feel like it would have been nice to really highlight I mean, again, the movie only wants to say they're good at fighting. So ultimately that's what she does. But it would have been nice to be like, there are many ways to be strong. Spartans are strong, and look at how this woman shows her strength and gets things accomplished. As opposed to at the end of it, she just stabbed him and killed him. And that's the end of that.
Right. Well, I mean, arguably you could say like, oh, she stabbed him, killed him, but also revealed the fact that he was a traitor. But I don't think that she knew that she was a traitor. That was just one of those things.
This is what I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
it was like there could have been like strength and an intelligence of like, maybe you still want to have her kill him because again, I get the poetry of he said something to her and she can use it again against him when she's killing him. I understand keeping that, but it does seem like she was just like, hey, like we need to send more help. And then he pissed her off and she stabbed him. And then she's like, oh, but I guess he is a traitor. And they're like, oh, I was lucky.
I will 100% admit like that is what that feels like. It's like, no, it's like, okay, you betrayed me. This is wrath that you deserve. Oh, he's also a traitor. Like I don't think there's any indication of that one character being a traitor throughout the whole movie.
Well, there is, because you see him getting paid off by people. Like that. That is the payoff of the coins spilling out.
Okay, I missed the.
And they said like when you do this, like this is all the money you'll be getting. Like there's more coming. Yeah. Right. So there is, he's a traitor as well as just a bad person because he rapes her. But like I think what I want to say is that it doesn't feel like the movie has a lot of different like tricks up its sleeve. It really is just the violence thing.
It's a very surface level movie.
Sure. Yeah, and I there was room for it, and because as you know, I'm never like, oh, this movie needs to be an hour and a half. Like it doesn't matter. It's as long as it needs to be. But considering the amount of time we spent in this movie, other things could have happened. There was.
So what were some of the other things that you would have liked to see?
I think I've said them. That in real life, there was so much bureaucracy going on that needed to be torn down so that the Spartans could get help. They don't really focus on that. It is just kind of like, don't get me wrong, there are lines in the movie that talk about it, but it's like, if you think about how many fight scenes they have, they certainly had time to have more than just one line about the bureaucracy that's stopping the support. Like there could have been like, even if her attempts were futile, just the way her husband's were, you could still show that parallel story of like her attempts to get help, their attempts to hold things off, and they can all come together in the end where it didn't really matter what she did because they didn't want to help out, and it didn't really matter what they did and no one came to help them. Like I feel like that is a better use of all the time we're spending in here, is watching two different modes at the very least. of like what's going on, and it gives this character that they spent a lot of time with a lot more to do than be raped and then be like, oh, fuck you, and stab him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the fact that they're showing that she's trying to be diplomatic and he's the scumbag that's like, what do you think I want? And I'm like, oh god, this is gonna be so scummy, and this is gonna be terrible. Like it was just, but yeah, I mean, they casted that guy really really well though. He gave me creep vibes the entire time, and
so it's McNulty from The Wire.
Yep.
Who's usually the hero, but yeah, he's a real creepy. Yeah, I mean, I am aware that's not what the movie wanted to do. I just feel that, like, even if I say don't shorten the movie, there was space to do other things in the movie.
Oh, there's definitely space to do more stuff in there, but it's very obvious the focus.
In that sense, it comes off as uneven to me because I'm like, I feel like we already had the big payoff, and that's why I brought up the "This Is Sparta" thing. That type of emotional thing is something you think would have happened at the end of the movie, like that's his battle. But if you start at 100 of him just being like, "This is just a messenger that came here, and look what I'm doing," it doesn't give much room to build up to anything else that would have an emotional impact at the end. Yes, you see him die. Yes, you see the spirit, but like, it just feels like for his character, not just the audience reaction to him. There's no build or anything like that, so it feels uneven because it's like, well, we did all of his stuff at the beginning of the movie. Like, you go through what he was like as a kid, you get the "This Is Sparta" moment, and then the movie starts, and it's like, oh, okay, like what is there left to do then? So then it leaves me being like, okay, another fight scene, great, another fight scene, great.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie is definitely only concerned with the visuals. I think someone, when they reviewed this movie, said that you would only like this movie if you like Quentin Tarantino, excessive violence, or violent video games as a teenage boy.
Except for that Quentin Tarantino has amazing dialogue, which this movie isn't really concerned with.
Correct. Yeah. So, and then, which is accurate. I mean, like, there's apparently there's a lot of women that really liked Queen Gorgo and went to see the movie because of that too.
That makes sense.
And I'm glad they have that. It's really fantastic.
And like, when I'm criticizing that, it's like, I understand that, like, there has been a progression, and like, we're still struggling to have fleshed out female characters. So like, it's not like I'm like, oh, this movie missed the mark and here's 10 examples of comic book movies doing it better. It's just like from the same time frame. That's why we're revisiting this. It's just, we are revisiting it, and my sensibilities this time are like, one, like, I feel like she's the only female that speaks more than one line. Like, because I get that when the hunchback is being wooed over to the Persian side, there are women who may or may not be saying things I don't even remember.
Right.
But like, it's not of substance. Like, she has the substantial role of the speaking role. So she's the only one. And then in that sense, you're like, does this movie pass the Bechdel test? Which, again, is such an easy thing to pass if you think about it. And it's just like, oh, nope. She doesn't have a conversation with any other woman in the movie. Yeah. And so it just feels like
it's always in service to the men.
It's nice that she's as strong as she is. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say she's not strong. I appreciate that it's even more than she gets to do in the comic. That's also a very big plus. Yes. It's just that, like, again, I just keep coming back to, like, the amount of time we spend with this movie. There was room for more.
There is, but like we stated, like, that's not Snyder or Frank Miller's intent here.
No.
To put more in, and even Snyder, he purposely says, like, yeah, we purposely did not try to update this to draw any allegory or parallel between any current event. It's just like, if you see a parallel between a current event, that's you projecting onto it. It's like, no, we just wanted to do this movie kind of deal, and like the adaptation or stuff like that, he's just like, no, I just really wanted to adapt this comic book.
That sounds about right for Zack Snyder.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, no, I'm not going to do anything deeper, or if I try to, I'm going to fumble it. Like Watchmen.
Mhm.
Spoilers. But yeah, it's to me, it's a movie I enjoyed for one single purpose: visuals, fight choreography, and just
Yeah.
ridiculous, chaotic mayhem. The same reason why I love Nick Cage movies like Con Air. It's just so ridiculous that you love it.
But the thing is with Con Air is those I feel like there's like likable characters in that movie, and there's a sense of not taking itself so seriously, which
Mhm.
is not this movie. This movie takes itself way too seriously
It does
for
take
me
itself
to
way
be
too
like, it's like Con Air. It isn't. Like, and I think that is part of me not liking it as much. Is like you
Mhm.
have the one scene, I believe, where Michael Fassbender's laughing, and he's like, "Yeah, you just had to say blot out the like we are fighting in the shade. Look, it's happening," and they're laughing about it, and I'm like, that's like the one bit of levity, and then everything else is these like weird, like stoic or homophobic things,
Yep.
and it's just like, like it's not fun in that way. It's definitely cool to look at,
Yep.
but Con Air is a fun movie.
Con Air is a fun movie.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, but there's a sense of fun to it, and like a knowing thing of like we're having fun here. It isn't
Mhm.
like this trying to like it's not like a prestige play or like this self-serious thing.
Mhm. But no, I agree. It's the comparison to Con Air is a bad comparison. But what I mean is the movie is ridiculous in its own right.
But
But
I
it
don't
does.
think it's trying to be ridiculous.
But because it takes itself so seriously, it becomes ridiculous to
Mhm.
me, anyways. Like I'm like, what? This movie is really taking everything so seriously, and I'm like, it makes it really hard to enjoy from that department. Like
Yeah.
I have to overlook that aspect of like, oh, this is so serious and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, no, just get to the stuff I like. Get to the visuals, the cool like shot, the cinematography stuff, the costume design. I think was absolutely gorgeous. Um, everything. Like, there's so much about this movie, but like those are all things that are surface level, which is what Snyder does very, very well.
Like I don't even know other than Leonidas, because again, that's a name I know from real life. I don't know any character's name
No,
at all. Like I feel like that's weird too. That I could watch that movie and be like, did they say that person's name? Like I know Lena Headey's character's name, but I don't like. I'm sure they said it at some point, but I feel like she's referred to more as the queen, my queen,
yes,
than her name.
no one ever calls her Queen Gorgo. They're just like, my queen.
And I
Like,
don't know Michael Fassbender's name in the movie. Like I
Leo's.
just looked it up, but like
Yeah.
I didn't like. Did they say it?
No,
Like,
I'm sure they did, but it was so fast and probably just one time.
and to be fair, if you're speaking about Spartans, the idea is that they are just a unit. It doesn't really
Yes.
matter what their names are. But again, we're spending so much time with them that it's like some of them have to stick out as a character. Like we're doing
Yeah,
this.
right. To me, the biggest failure is me not knowing Captain Artemis's name, because he has such an important role in this. Like, he's like, no, I've like great captain, great friend, and all this kind of stuff. And like, oh my god, like that death scene with his son, like that was just so well done. And like
The beheading.
yeah, and the fact that you're like, I don't actually know his name by the end of this.
Mhm.
It sucks. It really sucks, because it's like Captain Artemis. He could like, the other soldiers could have been like Captain Artemis or something like that. Could have like at least said the name a couple of times. I understand why we didn't know the son's name from Captain Artemis and Michael Fassbender's characters, because of that unit thing. So to me, that made a lot of sense. And the only other two characters, aside from the people that we talked about, would be Xerxes and then Iphatules, the deformed Spartan outcast and traitor.
Mhm.
Like, those are the only two characters that I know
And I didn't know his name at all.
Well, I only knew it because like, oh, he's because he got that introduction. It's like, who Leonidas was like, who are you? You wear Spartan armor and are crimson and all that kind of stuff, but you're clearly not one of us and all that kind of stuff. And then he goes into the introductions like, I am Iphatules and all this kind of son of this person, let me redeem my father. And I'm like, okay, so he got a proper introduction, really, really great for him. But I think like aside from him and Xerxes and Leonidas and Gorgo questionably. I don't know their names. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Because I just get like, oh yeah, Michael Fassbender's fighting again. That was it.
Also, is it like I do want to actually talk about what's his face, the Fatalee's character.
Yeah.
So it just ends on him being bitter that they didn't let him fight with them, and then he
Correct.
turns on them.
Correct.
That also seems like a bad plot point. Like it
Yes.
should have been that like he tried or
Yeah.
something. Like he's just like, hey, raise your arm. Yeah, you can't fight. Get out of my face. And I'm like, that's.
Yep.
And I understand Spartans are known to have thrown their babies off a cliff if they cried or something. That's the reputation. But it's like, like, what is the point of this movie if it's just like, yeah, they don't like people, like they don't like deformity, they don't like anything. It's just like there's no journey to go on. Really,
No.
You're just like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know. That seemed like a missed opportunity to like show some kind of humanity for Leonidas, or someone to be like, oh, well, we can work with this, and then it would just be like he can't keep up, and Xerxes snatches him up anyway and turns him on it. But it's like for it to legitimately be like there's a quiet moment, and Leonidas is just like, no, I'm not working with you. Get it out of.
You know what I thought would have been a good move to use that character a little bit differently than the way they did was if Leonidas was like, listen, this is how the phalanx works. You know this. It has to be a whole thing. But you still have a good spear point. I can see we can use you in a fight and all this kind of stuff. Why don't you join the Athenians? Like, that to me would have made sense. And then like during the Athenians being not good fighters, if he got captured and brought back and tortured, and as opposed to being like, oh, I can just give you everything you want kind of deal. Like I can give you orgies, I can give you wine and everything like that, and a uniform. Like we can do that. After he was like captured and made it seem like, okay, there's some Stockholm syndrome stuff going on right here. That would have been kind of interesting to me. And then now he's reluctantly leading the army because now he's got the respect from someone that he's been looking for his whole life, but he knows that it's shallow. Like when Leonidas says to Fatales, he's like, I hope you live forever. And that cut so well. It's such a good line. It's like, I hope you live forever, knowing that the Spartan code is, no, we die for glory. Like that's our honor, and you will never get that honor.
Yeah.
That was such a good line. I loved it.
I don't like it for the hero of your movie.
Right. I agree. I agree. The idea that he was like, hey, did I tell you to kill him? No, let him talk. I want to hear him talk. Like that was good. And we're like, okay, there's empathy there. And I understand the phalanx thing. But to me, if Leonidas was willing to fight with Athenians the Arcadians, and then the Leonidas makes a point of being like, oh, what's your profession? What's your profession? What's your profession?
Like
and
that's a better line for that. Felt like a better thing. Like, look, I brought more soldiers than you. Like I like that. That's a great moment.
But then to be like, hey, look, I'm still gonna fight together with you people, even though you're not soldiers. Like it should have, to me, like, okay, where's the empathy there? That would have been really, really good because you're right. You're seeing this toxic masculinity thing. That would have been a moment of vulnerability for Leonidas.
Or, I mean, it's still him being like, you can't be on our team, but you can still help. I see the value in more bodies. And then 100%. Being like, yeah, work with the Arcadians. They'll take, like, that kind of dismissal makes sense because I think you're right that, like, his vanity in that sense of, like, well, we can't have someone like you on the team. But still being like, but to be like, nah, just leave us alone. Also, I hope you live forever. Like, I mean, I know he doesn't say it that way, but it's just like he's really dumping on this guy, and it's just like, and now I'm gonna feel bad when he dies. Like,
yeah, and like, although Leonidas did say, like, a very realistic line is like, if you want to be helpful, let's be perfectly honest, help us clean the bodies. He has to accept on some level. He's like, oh, there's accuracy in this. If the phalanx falls, the whole thing falls, and I would have betrayed the whole thing.
I just think you were right that if he was like, you can work with the Acadians, that would be.
I think that would have been
I
better.
think that would have been good.
So I would have really, really liked that. You can still have him trade by like getting captured instead.
Yeah, because he's like, oh, like this guy didn't want me.
Yep.
To me, like, yeah, I don't know. I
Because
think that
it
would have
would have
been a
made
better use of it.
it would have made a better use because it would have made sense because let's say for example in that fight scene where the Arcadians are stuck in that like little hole and then they just rush out and like do stuff like that. That was a really really cool scene. It could have been that and I forget where the sequence of that in the movies whether or not Ephathes already has met Leonidas, but if Ephathes was a part of that, you would assume that he would still be wearing the crimson, and like a general would have been like, wait, he's wearing their crimson, but clearly he is not one of them. There's going to be value in capturing him. Like they could have done something like that, and it would have been.
I just think it was too late in the movie, and I don't mean like it happened with 10 minutes left in the movie, but it was like we were too into the movie for me to believe that it was like a Mr. Incredible moment where he turns away like syndrome, and that's what creates his villain. It's kind of like, yeah, that's the beginning of the movie. Like he made a mistake there, and he has to learn from it. But this one, it was kind of like, I feel like it's too late for him to be learning from mistakes at this point. Like he should be like well into being like, and it would have been like his kindness of being like, you can fight with us is what got him, not him just being like, no, fuck off, guy, like, get out of here.
Yeah. Like his rationale, Leonidas' rationale for being like, no, you can't be a part of the Spartan team makes 100% makes perfect sense. But and no one's gonna, and even like Ephathes should have been like, yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a major thing, right? It is that moment. I do believe that could have been done so much better.
But I'm sure it was in the cartoon. I'm sure it was in the graphic novel. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure the graphic novel played out that way. So I guess fans of the graphic novel, if they changed it like that, they would have been upset. But they should be upset that there's more Queen Gorgo too in that case. If they were like, oh, we want a faithful adaptation, then it was like, well, is there criticism for the Queen Gorgo stuff, or are you just going to be like selective here?
Yeah. Well, who knows? Well, I don't. Is there anyone else to talk about in this movie?
I will say, speaking about the physiques of this movie, Stacy pointed out something that was very, very interesting. She said that Michael Fassbender didn't look like any of them.
He looked skinnier.
Yeah, he looked really, really lean. And she was like, to the point where I'm like, you look bigger than Michael Fassbender in this movie. And I'm like, well, thank you. But like, color me flattered. But at the same time, I'm like, I think she's got a point to that. I'm like, he looked really, really lean and thin and everything like that. I don't know. It was one of those things I never really noticed. But at the same time, I never really noticed that Michael Fassbender was actually in this movie too.
I mean, he's leaner, but it doesn't matter. It's not like he dies first or anything like that.
That's true. He's still a very capable fighter, and that's it.
Yeah, like it's not a hindrance or anything.
Correct. Yeah, he still makes it to the end with he still makes it to the end with Leonidas. I do love that line with Leonidas and Fassbender, like that last moment where Fassbender's dying and he's like, it's been an honor to fight by your side, and Leonidas goes like, it's been an honor to live by yours.
Well, he said an honor to die by your side, and then Leonidas said it was an honor to live with you.
Yeah, and then like the look Fassbender gives him, that was a great subtle thing that Fassbender did there. I really loved it. Yeah, he's a great actor. Really, really was. Really is. Sorry, not was, is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he is. I notice it, but it also doesn't factor into the movie that he's.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It's just like, I just wanted to know if like, I think like, was that something that bothered you too, or just like?
Didn't bother me. It was just like, yeah, it's Michael Fassbender.
Yep.
He doesn't really pack on the pounds that way.
Yep. We're not. To be clear, we're not body shaming. We are just saying, did that convincingly portray that Spartan imagery? Because it looked like Michael Fassbender was more of a lean kind of, I don't even know what you would say, like a sprinter or something like that. Like
Yeah.
speed seemed to be his thing, of a soldier thing more than anything else. But yeah, it worked for him. Certainly, his fight scenes were more agile and mobile than anything else. So the leanness, I guess, worked for him in that regard.
Maybe that's how it factors into the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any more thoughts, I don't think.
Hmm.
I feel like that's that.
Yeah.
Like, do you have anything else?
I don't think so. No. There's nothing more to say about this movie.
You probably forgot something really big, but that's too bad. This is what came to top of mind for us.
I guess the things that we could have talked about were, of course, how certain other groups responded to this movie, like the historical inaccuracies and how like a lot of people were pissed off with that, as well as the Iranian conflict thing. But I'm not one to speak to those, because those weren't things.
I'm definitely not going to talk about that.
And I'm not going to talk about that. But I just want to acknowledge that those were things that people had issues with in this movie. And
I mean, yeah. This is the
historical inaccuracies part, to me, I'm like, okay, well, you guys understand it's Frank Miller's 300.
Yeah, it's a comic book.
Yeah, we're not doing the actual like retelling. To your point, like there's a lot more political stuff in the actual thing and all that kind of stuff. If they did that, I could be like, I can understand why these academic scholars would be like, this was inaccurate, and this is inaccurate. I'm like, no. You've got Zack Snyder at the helm here.
I mean, that doesn't matter to a historian.
No, it doesn't. But you got Zack Snyder.
It's going to happen no matter what. But
it
would. That's why I don't care to talk about it, because
that's fair.
This movie isn't about like it wasn't whether or not it was marketed as such. It wasn't like a historical drama. It was a comic book movie.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's kind of like anyone who's upset about historical inaccuracies, that's going to happen. Like, I get that, but it also means that I don't have to like defend it or unpack it, because I'm like, that's not what the movie was trying to do.
I agree. If this was a documentary and we were talking about it, I'm like, yeah, we would be discussing the accuracies and everything like that. But no, this is a comic book adaptation.
Because for me, initially, I was like, it's weird that they have mostly black people in this, but I'm like, those just could be slaves that the Persian Empire.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that would be the idea, is that the Persian Empire as a whole, I think he said 1,000 nations. Obviously, it wasn't, but like, it could have been. I don't know. Maybe they did take a tally. The point is, it was a lot of different countries put together because of all the way they were dominating. So you would see different ethnicities as part of the Persian Empire. It did mean that for the movie, you're basically just watching white people kill people of color all the time. But like, again, what are you gonna do?
Well, yeah. What I mean, in this situation, there's nothing you can do here. I just appreciated. Yeah, there's a lot more people of color there. I like that. But you're right. You're just watching a film about white people killing people of color. But in this situation, it's like, okay, well, I mean, it's not like a race thing. It's genuinely like, no, this empire is like trying to threaten their way of life. And
to be fair, it is a race thing. That is Sparta's thing the whole time. It's like, not Spartan.
Okay, yes, you're absolutely right. It is a race thing. But I don't think the movie was interested in exploring the race thing.
No.
It definitely wasn't.
No, but it is a race thing.
Yep.
It was just so happened that this movie is about white people killing people of color.
Yep.
Yeah, that was excellent. Do you want to rate this movie?
Yep. I'm doing a 7.
You're not that far off, I don't think.
Yep. Really? I thought you'd be a lot lower on this.
No. I'm like I don't know, 6. Yeah, probably 6.
6? Oh, okay. Yeah. And I will be clear, my ranking of 7 is taking into account the toxic masculinity aspects of all that kind of stuff. Being very, very aware of that allows me to enjoy the movie a lot more. To be like, listen, I'm just not going to be inspired by this movie the same way that Ben was inspired by this movie in 2006.
Yeah, it's like, this is your Sin City. You're
Correct.
like, I acknowledge what's shit about this. It still works for me.
Yes. It works for me because I love video games. And this movie plays out like a video game. It's fantastic. It plays out like a video game. To me, I think this is honestly one of my best examples for one of the best comic book adaptations, like from an imagery standpoint. Like, it's one of the best, without a doubt. It's absolutely fantastic.
And you're only giving it a 7?
And I'm only giving it a 7 because I still am. The toxic masculinity stuff is, it is what it is. The killing people of color stuff. And if I was to give it anything over a 7, even though I enjoy it so much, it would be questionable at that point. You're just like, really?
Well,
this really
whatever, however it makes you feel. You don't have to like.
No,
a bunch of things that people like that are problematic.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Most things are problematic that have been done before 2020, and even now in 2020. So
yeah. I don't know if you could put a timestamp on it, but
there's no timestamp. I'm just trying to artificially put a timestamp. Yeah. I'm like, I judge Hollywood by pre-Me Too and post-Me Too. Like that is the event in Hollywood that I'm hoping changes a lot of these discussions that we have about, like, oh, is this a fully fleshed out character? Are these other side characters like, are they in service of the male? Is this primarily a white male driven story, and all this kind of stuff? And we're getting a lot more content that's not, which is great. But then the issue is now we have so much content that what are people going to support, and what is it going to die off? That's my primary thing.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, let's end on that. That was a lovely discussion about the movie 300. If you want other lovely discussions, as Ben said, we are part of the That Shelf podcast network. So please head on over to thatshelf.com. There's other great podcasts such as Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, No Budget Nightmares, What a Great Theme Song, and more. So you will be able to listen to those if you go there. If you want to hear older episodes of Spoiled Rotten, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. We are at tdfspoiled on Twitter, the spoiled podcast at gmail.com for email. So please do all those things. And if you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Amazon Music, a whole bunch of things. So please hit those things up and rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.